Hi, I'm Diana Kra. Thanks for joining me again in my Inspired Artist channel. And here are some more tips to better compositions. I'm doing right now a fall painting competition in my Facebook group, and I see where some people struggle. So here are just some of my tips when it comes to painting trees in a landscape. For instance, 3 trees in a landscape. Okay, we have uneven numbers in that composition. That is a plus, but it looks kind of very boring to me. I hope to you as well, because it is. So we have 3 trees with the same size. We have 3 trees that stand on the same level. We have 3 trees that have the same distance with the tree trunks here. So let's work on this and make that a little bit better. I think when we're having an arrangement of trees like this, it looks way more interesting. And when we integrate even the distance, creating distance, putting a tree in the front by increasing tonal values and setting it a little bit lower, and working with the edges of our paper. Here it's a thumbnail drawing. And even because we have 4 trees, which is not ideal, we should have 3 or 5 or an uneven number of trees. And here we're connecting the trees. We're not having just the tree tops very separate from each other. We're connecting the trees here. And then we're setting this tree because it's our focal area and it's supposed to be in the front. We're setting it with dark value in the front there. We have a way more balanced and interesting composition than arranging the trees like this. Then when we're doing a landscape painting and we're having a trail, for instance, we're going with the trail like this. So we're leading into our hills here, into our focal area here, and the trail gets narrower and it's coming from here and it's covering a whole area here, see? Rather than doing this, that is boring, and this is way more interesting. Leading the trail, leading the eye of the beholder into the painting by using a lot of space of our paper here. Okay, so these are way more interesting compositions we can do when we have a trail. I saw one painting here when we have a trail that goes like this. We still can increase it with yes, and we can still create more interest by putting a tree over top. Let's do some trees with perspective. So the trees in the front are way bigger than the trees in the background here and way closer together. And I'm still connecting my trees because I just simply think it's way more interesting when they are connected. I'm using the edge of the paper here with my front tree. I'm putting one tree here. Maybe I'm putting another one there. I don't think so. But just saying this tree cuts into our trail. And it already creates way more interest by cutting this see, into our trail here. Even though it's not ideal to have the trail like this going just into the painting. Doing some hills. Could even make this tree way bigger here because it's in the same. It's in the front here too. Like this one here. We could put this, because this is smaller, we could have set it a little bit higher there, but that is a quick sketch, making more interesting compositions by using different sizes of trees, different spacing of trees, using perspective. So this one could be a little bit bigger here too. And then going smaller and smaller and smaller into the front, considering this, right? And it could even be, if we have, for instance, that it's not ideal, our trail goes in here, and we have a painting that we want to do a row of trees along the trail on both sides, and our main focal area is supposed to be these trees. So I'm using the edge of the paper, integrating that in my composition, still going big here and smaller here, creating big shapes, and then having our trail disappearing in the hills over here. So I'm offsetting the trees here. This is a big shape. I'm offsetting my trail. This is 2/3, 2/3, and that is 1/3 again. I'm not doing this center here right in the middle of the painting. I'm just pulling it further. The more I pull the trail into one direction here and get the interest then there, away from the center, the more interesting it is. Okay, hope that makes sense. And then I'm using big shapes of the trees. I'm having them connected, and I'm using very strong colors in the front and then going weaker and weaker, and I'm using cooler colors in the back here. So more detail in the front, and then I'm going smaller and less detail into the back. That gives me the perspective then into my painting. I don't like this composition too much because simply I think it is still boring and it is hard to pull off correctly. It makes it all a big blur eventually. So I would rather say I'm going with this trail composition here, and then putting my trees in perspective along the trail as I'm going along. So not every reference photo you take and you like is easy to translate into a painting. Let's have a simple painting here with trees, and I show you something else I noticed. Okay, this is our main focal area. The tree stands there. I'm using cheap paper. I'm using fairly cheap paper, and usually I wouldn't draw anything. I don't want to have the pencil lines. I'm using warm colors, different colors, or yellow. Okay, so now it is still wet. What happens when I do some orange in there? The orange mingles with the yellow, and it just makes the orange a little bit lighter, right? Because on the color wheel, orange and yellow are analog to each other, and we know how to mix colors, so it stays nice and vibrant. Even if I go back and put some lighter yellow in my orange, doesn't happen much. It still stays vibrant, right? So what would happen if I put some green in there? So red and green or orange, this is fairly red here. I put some green in there, and can you see what happens now? It looks like it is kind of molding. It means our color turns into a neutral because green and red are complementary colors. We have to be very careful when we mix them. And because everything was wet, everything mixes by itself. Well, and yes, we love this, absolutely. But we just need to be aware of this fact when we don't want the colors to mix. See how brown it gets here already? I'm just creating an interesting edge here. So this tree is my focal area, and I want it to stand out. So I'm not using green necessarily to make this tree fall like because I want to have the interesting vibrancy of the yellow color and the orange color. I want to preserve this. I want to have it really glowing, right? Okay, so let's see how we can do this in the background, because in the background we know that we're using cooler colors. So in the background I'm going with my green here. And I'm using different shades. So I just add a little bit of green, and then I'm thinking, okay, I need cooler colors. I'm getting with some blue in there, make it darker. And even though if we have fall colors, I'm going with my blue, and then I'm going with my orange here. With orange you have to be very careful, or with red, because it's quite potent and you just don't need much. So here I'm mixing on wet my greens with the orange and the blue, and I'm getting a murky color. See? Murky color, murky blue, some more red and some less red. Even so we have fall, I want to consider that these trees here are in the background. So I'm using less tonal value, and I'm using less intensity of my color hue, which is, so if I want to, just to bring it all together, I can dab in a bit of yellow here, as long as it is wet. Let it mix, make it more interesting. But it's still more cool yellow with the blue. Okay, so you notice I have different shapes here. I'm going from bigger to smaller because this is my most distant point here that I want to indicate. So I'm using then also different distances with my tree trunks because I want to make it interesting. Different size and different distance. See here, we're getting there, and there is just some brown points here. And then we are creating already an eye crutch, and we're leading into that painting. We're leading onto our tree in the foreground here, and see how nicely the colors granulate. It's a cheap paper I'm using here, but I like it because I love the granulation of the paints. I love when they do this. It depends on the paints and on the paper. And I love how this all, see how this all runs together. And the focus is right on that tree here. So I'm using different, a little bit interesting edges here, and I'm integrating the edge of the paper here, connecting the tree to my painting, connecting this side here too. And then on the foreground I would use a warm warm color here, or warm green even. Warm color. Don't want it to stand out too much because the main focal area is my tree top here. And this is a bit cooler because it's supposed to be more in the background here. So this hill is cooler. And since purple and yellow are complementary colors, right? I'm gonna put a little bit more purple there and just bring it all together. Just make it interesting and create in a color harmony. I hope you enjoyed this little tutorial, and I hope the points of the composition tips, they are interesting to you and will help you to create a more interesting composition. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.